The views and opinions of the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
You have to be strong in today's world. Keep your focus and what you believe in, how to achieve all your dreams. Keep moving forward, never accept less than who you are. Live your best life. Be strong and free. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
The Hit Back with Nahaja Black is sponsored by the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, BTC, Boost Academy, Dwayne Sands of Elizabeth Estates, J.S. Johnson, Baja Retreat and Spa, and the Progressive Liberal Party.
Good afternoon, Bahamas, and welcome to the Hit Back. I'm your host, Nahaja Black. It's a beautiful day here in the 242. Why all of a sudden I don't know how to fix my hat? Okay, there you go. All right, everybody. Hope you're doing well, taking care of yourself, enjoying your best life, living your best life today. We got a good show for you today. We got a full show for you today. I'm kind of excited. We got a topic. Of course, you know I love to talk about the economy, so I'm looking forward to that discussion. We also have Bishop Simeon Hall. He'll be joining us as well. Yesterday, Bishop Simeon Hall sent a voice note that went around talking about vaccinations in the church. Well, in particular, as a believer, not the church, but as a believer, and his stance on it. And then we have my good friend, economist, always excited to have him on, Rupert Pinder, joining us today on the show. But what is going to be very interesting, and we start off the show with this, I guess, a challenge, right? So we have challenges with all of this going on with COVID-19, but we also have an election. And so there was an interesting day today. The paying of respects to the late, great A.D. Hanna, most honorable A.D. Hanna, was today. We saw a lot of parliamentarians out. We got to hear from an interesting quote from the former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Hubert Ingraham. That is interesting. We're going to play that. But before all of that, at the paying of respects, there was a challenge issued this morning. And I thought it was interesting, and I want to share this with you.
When he called the snap election last week, the Prime Minister said the country needs to choose which leader it believes can lead us out of the present crises. I agree. We need a reset. And so today, I've written to Hubert Minnis, challenging him to a public debate. Elections are all about choice. And to make an informed choice, voters need to shine a spotlight on those who seek to represent them. They need to scrutinize closely the solutions being proposed, and they need to have faith that the promises made will be kept. So let's have a debate. Around the world, debates are considered an essential component of a healthy democracy. And so I say to the Prime Minister, let's put the choice squarely in front of the Bahamian people. Come and debate me. Let's answer the tough questions. Show up and put your track record and your plans before the Bahamian people. I will gladly do the same. The clock is ticking fast towards Election Day, so we must move quickly. Let's make the choice real. Prime Minister, I am confident that the Bahamian people are ready for a new day. Are you?
Well, okay. So, challenge, shot out the cannon. So the leader of the opposition, Brave Davis, is issuing a challenge that Dr. Minnis, no debate, no talk show coming, Dr. Minnis would actually debate him on the national stage. Now, there's so much to be said that should have, and someone said it, both of them should have joined the debate they had months back, right? So this is now the question of, by the way, did we ever finish those debates? Wasn't there supposed to be a debate with the leaders of the party at one point? Was that supposed to be a third debate? We only had two debates, didn't we? We only had two debates. Did I miss a debate? I'm not sure anymore. So anyhow, we have the leader of the opposition, Brave Davis, throwing down the gauntlet, right? Throwing down the gauntlet. Say, someone says a doctor can't take a lawyer. I actually don't think there are some really terrible lawyers, like, I mean, not eloquent. They may know the law, but they can't debate, right? They can debate the law. But when it comes to a vision or a plan, I don't think, I only remember 2 debates as well. I think there were supposed to be 4 and there weren't the other ones, right? So this is where the challenge comes, right? We were supposed to have these debates, but what we did know was that the Free National Movement never planned to do a debate, never planned to show up for a debate. I go back to this. I remember explicitly when I was at ZSR and I had my show there, the Nahaja Black Show. We were going through all of these candidates, and I remember, and I was, still not nobody now, but I was less of a nobody. I was less of a person then, but I was still doing well for my first time as a talk show host, really. And I remember saying, but he's not sitting down for any interviews. That's Dr. Minnis. Dr. Minnis was not sitting down for any interviews, right? So, and the question was then, it was Perry Christie. Well, Perry Christie will talk you around a circle. Again, Perry Christie is the brother I call the Negro Shakespearean, right? Where he would try to, thou, thus, these, try to make a small word, a big word. Just say, Mr. Christie, former prime minister, that the table is round. We will get it. But oh no. So obviously Perry Christie had no issues with speaking, public speaking. One of the issues that Brave Davis is finding for himself is that many say that, he's lackluster. He's not a good orator right now. One of the things I did notice in his speech, what was that speech? I don't know, I guess it was a coming out party. I guess once the elections were called, it was that night at 8:00, that he did much better. He sounded better. He may be improving in the speaking category. But this one took me aback. And I was reminded that this happened last time, but it was against Perry Christie and Dr. Minnis. Dr. Minnis said no to that. I got backside information that his now press secretary, Ace Newell, was very much excited that Dr. Minnis would go ahead and do that debate. And Dr. Minnis said, you know what, he'll do all of his talking. I was told, sources said he'd do all of his talking on the campaign stage. Well, it worked, because we voted for him without saying a word, without him defending his ideas or his thesis or his vision of it's the people's time. Perhaps if we did hear a defense of the idea of it's the people's time, we might have gotten an idea of which people, right? The timelines and the strategy. So now, okay, you have the leader of the major party, the opposing major party. So we know, I think everybody's safe to say that there are 2 major parties, 2 A group parties. Then everybody's B group, and then you got some C group parties. C group parties, we barely know what they are. But this is now where it's curious. Now, Brave Davis, I was going to say Brave Minnis, Philip Brave Davis is doing something different. I honestly was impressed with this. Because the fact that he had the audacity to call out Dr. Minnis and say, let's do a speech, when one of the things that is said against him is that he is not a great orator. One of the things said is that the man, he fumbles with his words and he wants to debate. He is throwing it down. Now, here is where it's getting interesting, right? Is this all gamesmanship because we already know that Dr. Minnis will not debate anyone, right? So is it gamesmanship, but does it still make Dr. Minnis look weak or afraid? Or what would be his strategy? I thought this was I don't think Brave Davis loses by throwing down the gauntlet on this one. I think it further cements the narrative that Dr. Minnis answers to no one. And he's proven us, Dr. Minnis has proven us that he can win an election without having to express his heart, without a script. He's proven to us that he can win without defending his thesis. Now, some will argue, Brave Davis wants to stand there and defend his. This is where it's interesting and why I think the debate should happen. Now, imagine you have a host that asks directly to Dr. Brave Davis, tell us about, that there's an issue or a deficit with people trusting you. People don't know really why they don't trust you. Because I think I've asked, and it's just a cultural thing. I think it's a cultural thing when people just feel it in our lower regions where something ain't right? So this would be very interesting if Brave Davis was to say, I will answer those questions. I am not running from those questions. I would like to see Mr. Philip Brave Davis actually do the talk show circuits and not be afraid to take these questions. This is where now I would like to see this happen. Honestly, I would love to see this happen. Now, Dr. Minnis is saying he's looking to, the gauntlet was, you said that the Bahamian people have to decide between the best leaders, the best leader who will lead the country. Defend your ideas. I like it. I like it. But I don't think he's going to do it. Oh, no. So then, what is this? I don't know what it is, but I like it. I like it. I like that the gauntlet is thrown down. Now, Dr. Minnis has to make his move. Will his move be not to answer or respond? And there was an argument. I heard the argument. He should have been there. Well, for the record, he couldn't have been there for the leaders' debate. And, okay, so honestly, y'all, I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth. I remember when I first heard I was disappointed that the Free National Movement was the only group who was not going to debate. Very disappointed, right? And someone from the Free National Movement, some of those who are dealing with PR said, hey, why would we, this is what was said to me, why would we debate all of these smaller groups, right, who are seeking to build up off of their attacks on the government? It would be to no benefit for us. We would lose ground if we are seen to be debating with this. We lose no ground if we don't, right? So politically, they calculated that others would be building their brand if they were able to fight against the Free National Movement. So what we found even in the debates, what I thought was that the only thing left since the Free National Movement wasn't there was to pile on the PLP that was there. And mind you, the PLP brought no candidates in those debates, just for the record, no heavy hitters. They were, they did the young person who wasn't running in the youth debate, and then they brought Dr. Melissa Evans, who was also not a candidate in the other one, right? No candidates. Everybody else brought candidates. And so they at least also figured out, and so they kind of said, we're present, but we're really not, right? We're present, we were there, but we're really not. Now, that means that there was a calculated consideration. This is, and I'm learning politics as well, I'm learning a lot of things on how they're making decisions. The calculation is, everyone wins. We lose if we are there, right? We lose if we're there in terms of the bigger groups because everyone piles on, and so they win points. But if we're not there, we don't lose any ground. Maybe Dr. Minnis is saying, I don't lose ground if I show up, if I don't show up. It is what it is. You don't expect for me to say anything. Am I going to lose ground? But if I show up and Brave Davis surprises people, Philip Brave Davis surprises people, and is by far the more superior in the debate, well, dog, eat your lunch. Now, we don't know where ground zero is. We don't know how low the Free National Movement is. Can they go lower in the ratings or in the eyes of the Bahamian people? Can the Progressive Liberal Party actually go up higher in the eyes of the people? We have no idea, but I think the people deserve a debate between the two major parties. I'm now of the mindset that politically it serves them no purpose. Someone says, Nahaja, both of these leaders need to push out. The parties aren't going anywhere, y'all. They are not going anywhere. The giants don't walk away from dominion. The giants have to be conquered. And the conquering one has to come out with authority, of grace from the Father. And if it's their season, the giants will fall. If you're out of season, the giants end up victorious and you get squashed. So this is where we are. Whose season is it? Is it the season of the Davids? Is David here? Or is it just like Goliath said, many have come and I've slew them all? Are these small groups of the many who will get slew? Or is there a ram in the thicket? Is there a David in this group? I would love to see this debate. I think it would be brave of Dr. Minnis. Isn't that just the greatest pun? But it would be brave of Dr. Minnis to decide to debate. And I think we would have a great opportunity to have a classic and something that might be that would be far stronger in our democracy if we began to see these people make that move. So I am happy. I am impressed. Because Brave Davis also is proving something, he's working on proving himself to the Bahamian people, because I believe the Bahamian people are having a challenge with seeing Philip Brave Davis as the prime minister. A good portion, not everyone, a good portion. And I think a lot of people are still saying that they do not want to see Dr. Minnis as their prime minister. So this is where it's a very interesting. I would love this debate. I hope that Dr. Minnis says yes to it. I don't know if that is sufficient politically. I think that he knows he would have a lot more to lose. But if you are trying your last, if you're throwing your last ditch effort to get elected, this might be your last ditch effort. Dr. Minnis, you could come out and say, you know, the way you just roll out the press, handle Brave Davis. The way you just roll us out, just roll him out like how you roll. Call him Travis if you need to. Just do your NPO, do something, show up. I would be excited to see it. All right, so we got some other things too that I want to share with you. I think the debate idea. I know somebody else says. Someone says it's a trap. The debate, don't bite. So Dr. Minnis should call his bluff, but we know Minnis won't. But Mr. Davis is just as bad, won't sit down to be interviewed, but wants to run the country. So both of them will say nothing and do nothing once elected. And I agree. If Mr. Brave Davis is not sitting down for interviews, someone says, yeah, Brave Davis was on. He was on Clint's show, wasn't he? I think he was on Clint's show, right? Was actually. Someone says that's just a political string Brave pull, menacing on his run. We'll see, but I would love that idea. And I think Dr. Minnis at this point needs every brownie point he can get. And I think the Bahamian people would like to ask him some questions. We've allowed that run for so long. We've allowed that run for so long where Dr. Minnis has not been called to carp for his business dealings, for how he's done business. We want him to answer straight. We want it on the record. What happened with Dorian? Where was the shortfall in Dorian? What has happened with regard to your plans for the economy? Why did you abdicate or seemingly abdicate your responsibilities with COVID-19? Why do these things now? What is your plan to get us out of the economic spiral that we are in, where we've seen the debt to GDP under your administration increase every year except 2019, where actually, for the record, was going down. So we might have been trending in a positive position, and that is the unfortunate thing because of, I do believe, Dorian. But it is what it is. We'll see how this is. Something else, and if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM. Something else was today, Prime Minister Hubert Ingram was at, reminiscing on Adi Hanna, and also shared some other comments. And let me give you one, and then I want you to hear what his statements were on Adi Hanna. And then we'll go from there. I wanted to see this one here, and I think this is it. Let's see. Yeah, this is it. Let's go. Hopefully. Let's see if it plays.
First of all, I assume that you all are fully vaccinated.
Oh, wait, hold on. Hold on.
Secondly,
all right, so I'm having a hold on. I got one little slight technical issue. And I'm going to fix that right now. All right. Should have it. And it should be ready to go. Yeah, I think that's it. Let's see. All right. And we're going to add it to the screen. Oh, yeah. Look at me getting all tech savvy. All right. So let's get this party started.
First of all, I assume that you all are fully vaccinated, and so I took my mask off. Secondly, Adi Hanna played a critical role in my own political development and development of the Bahamas. He's truly a patriot who believed in the Bahamas and the Bahamians. take on the briefest to my constituency. And we passed Treasure Keep. There were some trailers that they had started a school in. It was incensed that the government hadn't built a school for the children to go there. Came back to Nassau, and in a matter of months, we had the school under construction in Treasure Keep. Unfortunately, it got damaged in the hurricane and has not been rebuilt. So I feel the city was then that hasn't been rebuilt, and unfortunately, I can't do anything about it. He could, he did. When I was a young minister, we determined that we needed to, the government determined that we needed to have a new housing policy. There hadn't been a new housing development by the government for many years. And the list of states. And the list goes on of the things that he was involved in here in the Bahamas. In terms of, he promoted senior public officers and Bahamians to take positions that had proved by English persons and non-Bahamians. He was the first Minister of Education and provided scholarships to countless Bahamians to go to the University of the West Indies. People like the President Prime Minister were beneficiaries of his policies in terms of education. So all I can say is that in more recent times, he and I were coming out in arms in political fight. He resigned from the government, having served from 67 to 84. He resigned on a Friday. I got fired this on a Monday. He was very supportive of me when I ran as an independent. And his daughter, Glennis, she came and held a full election on Aberco when I ran as an independent. And he was with me until the end. The last time he happened to be Governor General, that was a great reunion. The one regret I had is I begged him to accept the award of a knighthood, usual thing for a Governor General. And even after he was in office, the palace wrote to me saying it was still available to him. He was not interested in any foreign awards. He wanted to be one Bahamian awards. The guy was a Bahamian prisoner and got the Order of the Nation for what he got in office.
Former Prime Minister Hubert Alexander Ingram on 80 Hannah today. And there's also more commentary that the former Prime Minister gave. So in essence, and someone said it was low on the other side. So I'm sorry if it was low. I wasn't sure about that. So my apologies if it was low. So in essence, what the PM shared were stories of how 80 Hannah was really by his side, how he was there, talked about a school at Treasure Key, right? Someone said it sounded to me, someone said it sounds to me like Prime Minister Ingram endorsed the PLP today on the slick. There's a PLP on the slick. Well, anyways, talked about Treasure Key and how he helped us start a school, and really talked about how 80 Hannah, the most honorable 80 Hannah, was a man who was a go-getter, how he did not want a foreign honor. He wanted and he ended up with the Bahamian honor, of course, and that he was a man that just did the work. He saw a problem and he would resolve it. And even on the slick said that, the Treasure Key is down and he doesn't have the power to fix it. That's what the former Prime Minister, like if he had the power, it'd be fixed. I'll tell you that. So we got some other comments from the former Prime Minister, and we will hit that too, because he also said something very interesting. I tell you, about the proroguing of the House and the early dissolution of the House. And I want to get to that, but I got to get to my guest as well. And so we'll come to that, and I want y'all to stay tuned on that. Let me get some of these text messages before we go. Someone said, Nahaja, which track record is Brave talking about? He's sure he consulted with Fred Mitchell? I don't know. Said if Brave wants the PM to debate him, all he has to do is tell the PM, if you are a man, debate me. Trust me, the PM from Bain Town, he will show up to debate. Boy, y'all can talk your mouth hard, eh? Say if you's man, debate me. Nahaja, what would also be interesting is a debate between deputy leaders as well as the health minister and the PLP representative for health, especially considering the climate we're in. Yeah. Yes, it would be great. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, let's dive in. We're going to talk briefly with Bishop Simeon Hall. I want to get his take on it. He shared some interesting thoughts. I want to get his take on vaccinations. We'll be back right after this.
Beulah gal, can you believe this? We are now the patrol queens of the neighborhood.
We now large and in charge. So we need to check out what's going on in everybody's yard. What about that gun that we know that Junior and his homeboys just ran out? Can we report that too?
Of course we can.
But we could be in deep trouble if they find out.
We need to report what we see, Beulah. When you call Crime Stoppers, they just answer your call in Miami.
So then we can report everything? Guns, where they hiding the drugs, who shoot who part of which gang, or who disturbing the peace with the loud music and the motorcycles.
Then our neighborhood will be the best in the Bahamas, and everybody gonna want to come live here. And then our house price will go up, gal.
So what we waiting on? What's the number?
If you see something, say something. Let us all pitch in and stop the crime before it's your time. Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands. Or text us through the Crack Crime Bahamas app. Stop the crime before it's your time.
When I had got prostate cancer, my family didn't know if I was going to live. At Cancer Treatment Centers of America, within days, I got an appointment. They presented me with treatment options, and we set up a robotic prostatectomy. When my scans came back, there are no signs of cancer. They don't see you as a number, they see you as a part of the family. I'm going on with my life. It's a real gift.
Call us at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
Many people wonder, what makes Boost Academy unique? Maybe it's our 8-to-1 student-staff ratio, the emphasis we place on student individuality, our focus on numeracy, literacy, and creating better citizens by sharpening students' critical thinking skills. One of our many talented teachers, program facilitators, and mentors. Or just maybe it is our commitment to taking full responsibility for your child's education, no hidden fees or costs. Regardless of what it is, let us help your child reach their full potential. Boost Academy is currently enrolling students of grades 4 through 12. Visit www.boostbahamas.com to apply now.
Rejuvenate, refresh, treat yourself. Immerse yourself in total comfort. Pamper yourself. After all, you're worth it. Relax. Rid yourself of all life's stresses. At Baja Retreat Anti-Aging Spa, you will find everything you need to enhance your body and spirit. Call today at 323-6711 and begin your journey to serenity at Baja Retreat Anti-Aging Spa.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. I just saw a really funny post. Someone says, Nahaja, I just want to watch a YouTube video without being interrupted by Brave. I'm having this challenge, and we're going to be bringing a good friend. I feel now like someone who I really, I'm happy that I've gotten to know over these past 2 years. He and I on an unfinished project. That's where we are now. But I am actually seeing all of the anti-Brave. I don't know what algorithm I'm set to, right? So I'm seeing all of the anti-Brave, Davis, anti-PLP stuff, right? And I haven't seen an F&M, well, I guess that's an F&M ad, but I haven't seen a PLP ad yet on YouTube. I don't know what kind of algorithm they got me on. I don't know. We've got joining us the one and the only Bishop Simeon Hall. Bishop, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm doing well. I'm enjoying your show too.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Bishop. You seem like you were definitely, tuned in when you saw the former prime minister. Let me ask you before we dive into this, what we want to talk about, your thoughts or memory on the late, great, most honorable A.D. Hanna.
Oh, yes. He was charismatic in a very quiet way. The few times I had dealings with him, I think we have another hero that we could celebrate and perhaps replace some of the foreign ones we have emulated. But I think he's deserving of he was a man, not, as you said, with titles and all that, but certainly with action. And he moved the Bahamian people forward and upward. I think he did a good job. He's deserving of all the country gives him.
Yes. Well, one of those things where I hope that we move past today, knowing that we have to do more to remember some of these great legends in our country, not just in the moments when they pass, but creating a hall or a space or a museum that really shows the story of the heroes of the Bahamas, not just politicians, but all of the women of the suffragette movement, all of the shop store owners who were there to help and ensure that children ate in the community. Some of those who wrote books to, I think there's so much heroes in the country, Bishop. And just as a segue, when you talk about A.D. Hanna, it's persons like yourself who are, who continue to contribute and refuse to be silent at any point.
I take exception to the way we deify politicians as they're the only ones who can solve problems.
That's right.
Part of the challenge we face is to be as broad and nationalistic as possible and to get ideas from all facets of our society. We cannot depend on a politician who is a layman today and he gets elected and then he's a minister tomorrow with such know-how and authority.
That's right. That's right. You preach it. I'm with you on that because that's how we do it, right? We deify you. As soon as you become minister, literally you are a minister we bow to, a minister of the cloth, minister of housing. You're revered. So it's a cultural shift.
Yeah, but mine, if I may, permit me to begin by saluting our nurses and doctors and those healthcare persons. I did a prayer meeting at the Anglican office there near west of the hospital. We had several pastors just to pray for them. And it was meaningful because they are at the very forefront of this work. And secondly, we've had some nurses and doctors who died, literally died. So we really need to take this thing seriously. You are aware that I was struck some months ago, and with all the precautions I took, I came down, I went in for one ailment, and the doctor told me, you're COVID positive. But that experience was spiritually transformative for me. It was really, I tell people, I know what death smells like because I was on a ward where everyone was COVID positive and I couldn't move. It didn't bother my respiratory organs, but it did bother my legs. So along with saluting nurses and doctors and persons in the healthcare ministry, we need to say there are 330 families who've lost a loved one. And, that for me is enough to cause us to put aside the politics, to put aside even the personal biases and say we are in a crisis. And I'm not sure the Bahamian people are as crises oriented as I would like to see it. And, so I am doing my bit to keep saying, listen, we need to be more conscious that I owe it to my brother to protect him. That's what the little Christ in me seeks to do, that I owe it to the people or my family first, and then the people across the street from me. I owe it to them to go take the vaccine.
Bishop, let me ask you, Bishop Simeon Hall joining us. One of the challenges, my good friend CA says that that our belief in religion is also is a part, he claims to be a part of the hindrance to why so many aren't taking the vaccine.
I agree with him.
Go ahead, and your thoughts on that. I mean, and we've heard people say that
I
it's
agree wholeheartedly. Some of us, we talk about heaven, but we really don't want to die to go there. Some of us play with our religion, and we have our theology. Martin King used to say our anthropology shapes our theology shapes our anthropology. How we think about God is how we think about one another. And so heaven is my home, but I'm not homesick. I'm in no hurry to go to heaven because I believe God wants me to do some things here. So I say to people, yes, I prayed while I was in hospital with COVID, but I understand that I was COVID stricken. And so I was ready to die. But as I said, on the third day, I started getting all kind of spiritual upliftment. I got 7 sermons while there. I think I've preached about 4 of them since then. But no, you could use your pain to find God's purpose. How about that? You can use you could use your pain to find God's purpose. And so we need not be so caught up. And it's one brother say the vaccine is the mark of the beast. Well, Christ is going to take care of me when the mark of the beast come or not. And that's what I believe. So I'm going to listen to I went to my doctor and he said, yes, I want you to take it with all your underlying illnesses. You need to take it. So I took 2 shots and it didn't bother me one bit.
One of the challenges, of course, is that, with this process of taking or my brother's keeper, right? I've heard folks say, well, listen, we're all born to die, right? And so there is this attrition. People said, we're going to die anyway. So
but you don't have to hurry it up. You don't have to go looking for death. The fellow who leaves his house 8:30 in the night and intend to come back 1:30 in the morning, he's looking for death. You don't have to go looking for it. I am going to die one day. And I've tried to make peace with God and try to do some things. But I realize at 74, I will go one day. So, that's not a big struggle for me. But I'm saying you don't have to go looking for it. I should not come out of my house going partying and inviting 20 people over to my house and all that. Come on. I support the idea of a lockdown. I think the only way we could put a dent in this thing, as you talk, put a dent in it, is we might have to stay home for 3-4 days. But the economic backlash of that is important. And, we're in a crisis. And the political leadership must know better than I why they would call an election during the pandemic. I pray God that when you go there to vote, you don't catch the virus from somebody else. I pray that doesn't happen. I understand democracy is that we have to do it. And whatever the political variables are, the party in power wants to do it now. I understand that, but I'm not sure that lends weight to the weight of we are in a crisis, and during a crisis, I gotta go vote. Well, I can vote, I promise you.
Bishop Simeon Hall with us on the show. Bishop, let me ask you this. Churches, I think one of the challenges with this story is that there are different factions who believe one thing versus the other. There are some pastors who are anti-vaccine and others who are pro-vaccine. Is that a challenge in messaging? Is there a biblical philosophy by which some connect to with this issue or others?
Well, before that, there are some 27 established denominations in the Bahamas, and most of them are part of the Bahamas Christian Council. It is difficult to get 27 of them to agree on any one thing, like the atonement or what the meaning of the Lord's Supper. They're all different, and they have that right. But that's why I am one of those who say, let's sit and debate, be it religion or be it who should be the leader. I think we should debate. You know, we do not, and you, for instance, you have done a good job on lifting the level of debate by conscientizing our people with issues.
Thank you.
When you did Philosophy 101, you had your thesis, you had the antithesis, then you had the synthesis. A position, an anti-position, then you had to try the compromise. The only way you and I might have different religious expressions, but the only way we can respect one another is to sit and talk. And so I join you and others, I don't mind saying it, in saying I would wish that the Honorable Prime Minister would and Mr. Davis would debate, because I would be a part of the audience as a layperson, and I put my hand up and say, I'd like to ask both of you a question.
That's right.
But you see, if we're not given that kind of a forum, then are you really pushing democracy? Are you really being transparent as you promised? So I think it's from the ground up. It's from radio talk show. It's from preachers who are not afraid to say how they feel. If I'm wrong, you have the right to say you were wrong, and I'm man enough to say, forgive me. But the debate must go on. And sometimes, most times, the House of Assembly does not set a good level of debate. Now, the church can help because we don't debate one another.
That's right.
And a divided church can hardly heal a divided country. So how are we going to do it? So we need to talk. We need to talk to one another rather than at one another. You know, look at me. I'm from the African tribe, and I have big nose, and I have dark skin and kinky hair. One thing, but my hair, where I put it, it is stayed. So I am praying that we would accept each other. I counsel 3 homosexuals. Let me put this out there. In the last several years, I've counseled 3 homosexuals. Well, one stopped coming, but the other 2 come. Because before I see them as a homosexual, I see them as a human being. Don't forget that. You are human first before your sexual orientation. So I invite anybody, and this is the why should PLP and FNM get mad with one another on the family island stopped speaking to one another, stopped going to that church, because we don't debate. And the prime minister and the leader of the opposition should lead the way in uniting our people in how to have an intelligent debate.
Bishop Simeon Hall joining us on the show here. Boy, Bishop, you said a mouthful on that, you know. You said a mouthful on that. And then I wonder, because this is where we are. There's a lot of anger out here in the country. There's a lot of frustration. We are angry with each other when it comes to the conversation of vaccinations. We're angry. Everyone is strong in their position, and there's no bending. But I think there are folks, though, I will tell you, I know folks who are staunch, but they're seeing the reality when some of their friends or their co-workers, unfortunately, are in the number. Or when they say, well, Jesus, I knew that person. I did, they were. So the real life situations are drawing people to get vaccinated. Where I'm wondering is that for those who, and look, folks are adults, right? They're adults. I've said on the show many times, Bishop, that every decision has its opportunity cost. So if we decide to do X, you can't expect that X will not have its opportunity cost or its consequences. If we are largely unvaccinated as a nation, then we will find that we keep on starting and stopping, that we can't help but get to a place where you got to shut it down again. You want to say something?
Yeah, but you see, you're right. I served as the president of the Bahamas Christian Council, and it was an interesting year. That's when I learned the polysyllabic word ecumenicity, that we could be of one faith, but you could talk to your brother on the other side. I think we missed an opportunity with Dorian and with the COVID-19 to be united. Can you think of any other time we ought to have been united? Can you think of any other time when I would have liked to have seen the Honorable Hubert Minnis and the Honorable Brother Davis on the same platform saying, let's work together regardless and put aside. They didn't do it. We keep rowing with one another, and I know where you live and you know where I live, and we call each other brother. We go to church on Sunday and say, what a fellowship, what a joy divine. But we at each other during the week. And I'm saying, let's use every opportunity. During the election, it is a snap election, right in the middle of COVID, but we have to follow the authorities. Let's talk to one another. You hold your view for who you support, but when we finish, we got to still live here. So let's do it for one another. That's how I feel.
Bishop Simeon Hall joining us on the show. Before I let you go, Bishop, and I thank you so much for the time, and hopefully we get to do this a bit more in the future. What are your, knowing now, and of course, like you said, you said the word that you smelled death. You know the smell of death with your challenges with COVID-19. For those who don't understand or may not, I don't know if it's not, the word does not get it. I think every Bahamian understands that there are some concerns, right? There are concerns. But for some who may not understand the severity or need that extra push to say, I'm going to trust God when I take the vaccine, rather than just saying, I'm going to trust God and not take the vaccine. I think that, to me, that's the scary. I'm like, but God gave man the ability to create it. And we are not an anti-vax nation. So I don't know what to do at this point, Bishop.
Yeah, well, I say to persons, make up your mind. Particularly if you're in my age range, I think you need to go take the vaccine. Now, if you don't take it, I think you need to stay home in your house. That's how I feel. I really feel that we need to take this seriously. And see, whatever you feel, whatever your conclusion, whatever you Google or what, most of the persons who are dying are not vaccinated. Shouldn't that give you some conclusion? That's all I'm saying. This is a new drug. It changes. I appreciate the political leaders. They say one thing one week, next week they're going to say something, because it is a changing thing. This has been a challenge for the competent authority and others. I pray for that. I say to people, I pray for politicians, because if they win, we all win. If they lose, we all lose. So, no, I think I support the idea of go take your vaccine. I don't know no other way to debate it, because whereas it's a new drug, it's being experimental, but it is saving lives. It is more a plus. And to be honest, I have been preaching for 57 years. I have done quite a bit of work. Few preachers in the country has a preaching record as mine. I preach on every island in the Bahamas, every island nation in the Caribbean, 45 states in America, 5 times in Africa, every continent in the world. If I sound braggadocious, I'm only testifying what God could do with a man from Chirpney-Calais. But all I'm saying is that at this point in my life, with all the mistakes I've made, I believe I've done more good than wrong. And so, yes, the virus is here. I don't want nobody to die. 330 people have died. That's a crisis. And on ratio with other Caribbean nations, how down we are. So no, let's take it seriously. Let's do our best. And with the political season that we're in, and you did all that at the front, I appreciate hearing that. I had the privilege of working with Prime Minister Pindlin. I preached 11 sermons for the PLP. I preached 4 for the FNM. I had the privilege of working with Prime Minister Christie. I had the privilege of working with Prime Minister Ingram. And I thank God, all 3 of them had an open door for us as preachers. And let's see what the future holds.
Bishop Simeon Hall, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate you. Stay safe. And we will do this again. Thank you so much.
I wish you God's grace.
All right. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Bishop Simeon Hall. I thought it was a very interesting one with Bishop. Get vaccinated, y'all. Get vaccinated, man. Get vaccinated. If you don't want to get vaccinated, stay home. Stay safe. Don't try to expedite your exit on the planet. I like most of y'all. We'll be back right after this.
Hello, Bahamas. My name is Dr. Dwayne Sands. I was born and raised in Centerville, in the heart of the valley, Nassau, Bahamas. I'm a proud Bahamian. I've been fortunate to represent the great people of Elizabeth for the last 5 years. It has always been my dream to serve my country, and I have been involved in the political process on the front line since 2009. I am very, very proud of the support of my family, who have been with me from the beginning and who are still with me to this day. In particular, my wife, Larica, and all of my children, and actually there's quite a few of them. I'm actually a cardiovascular surgeon. What that means is I take on the sickest people with the biggest problems every day. And so for me, the political process to deal with the challenges facing our country is pretty much par for the course. It's what I do every day. I am happy to be a part of the great team of the Free National Movement under the leadership of Dr. Hubert Minnis. We are indeed Elizabeth Strong.
This has been a paid political announcement by the FNM candidate for Elizabeth.
Elevate your home with BTC's super fast fiber internet plans for the best speeds to stay connected. Get 50% more savings with us and speeds starting at 100 megabits per second up to 600 megabits per second. Enjoy the ultimate internet experience for all your work, study, and entertainment needs. Plus, get unlimited mobile benefits when you add it to your home internet plan. Upgrade or sign up today. Visit any BTC store or btcbahamas.com. Conditions apply.
The PLP is hosting an economic summit where financial experts and business leaders share ideas and plans for transforming the Bahamian economy. Speakers will discuss the PLP's economic plan, a new blueprint to create a Bahamian economy that works for everyone. Discussions include opportunities in high tech, renewable energy, and training for entrepreneurs. Go to plpeconomicsummit.com and learn how you can be part of a new Bahamian economy.
This has been a paid political announcement by the PLP.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fixing my little hat, I got a hat on today. Hope everybody's doing well, taking care of yourself, living your best life. Please take care of yourself. Please, please, please take care of yourself. We are in some interesting times, physically, emotionally, financially. Things are stretched. Some people are doing better than others, but it doesn't matter how much you have. Having family is the most important. If you are going through something, if you are depressed, anything that's going on in your personal life and you need to reach out, talk to someone, please. There is, I think the center, the crisis center can give you help, but it's no need to be alone. Some families need therapy. I need to have on the show grief counselors. That's what I need to have on the show. I need to do a show about grieving because there's a lot of grieving going on and some families have lost two at a time. Some people are traumatized by what they and who they've lost. So, and how they've lost people. It's traumatic that you drop someone off at the hospital and you never see them. You get a call because you can't see them. You're talking to them on the cell phone. This is too much. This is too much. It is too much. And we need to stay safe, but we got elections and a pandemic. Won't it happen? Won't it happen? We got my friend Rupert Pinder, economist. So now with all of this, and Rupert, I see you backstage. If you can get on camera so we can see you, let's see if we can get this sorted out. So what are the things that we have to pay attention to? So now there's all of this rumors or circulating about why an early election was called. Is it true that an early election was called because we are not able to borrow anymore? That lenders are saying that, hey, listen, we may have to, you may have to increase revenue. That's one angle, and hence the snap election was called. Was it called because the speaker kind of blew out the whole thing with the open parliament session? So we ended up proroguing it, thinking you could get rid of the speaker. Then ended up having to do a resumption proclamation, only to come back the next day and do a dissolution of the House. What is going on? So I've got noted economist Rupert Pinder joining us, and I'm hoping that he's actually there on the line. Rupert, are you there?
Can you hear me, Nahaja?
I can hear you. Unfortunately, I can't see you, but we'll live with it. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. And yourself?
Can't complain. It's a pleasure having you on the show. For everyone who's joining us, Rupert Pinder, noted economist, joining us on the show. Rupert Pinder has been a fellow who has been using all of his skill sets, all of his degree, to actually give us some really accurate projections, and has been calling like he's prophetic, right? Like Nostradamus, the economic outlays and things that are going to happen. And so I'm so excited that you're joining us today, Rupert, because I got tons of questions for you, right? Tons of questions. First things first, Rupert, I want to ask you this. Where are we now fiscally?
Well, I think a lot has been stated. Well, I guess it's within the public domain, and that is that I think it's no secret. We do have a debt problem. We've had to borrow lots of monies during the pandemic. When the economy was virtually shut down in terms of tourism, so we've had to borrow a lot by way of foreign exchange. And there's no question, I mean, we do have a concern, I think, in terms of the debt relative to GDP or the overall income of the country. There's no question about that.
So now when you say, what does that mean though? What does that mean in terms of?
Well, what it means is that we do have, in my view, I think we do have to take some corrective action, right? And in my view, I felt that the budget that was presented in June, May of this year, which came into effect July 1st of this year. In my view, I personally felt that we didn't go as far as we needed to make the pivot, given in terms of some of the headwinds that we, that we are faced with. You had mentioned, it is simple, it is as simple as this. I mean, right now, well, in the last fiscal period, our projected expenditure relative to revenues was 1.3. In other words, we were projected to spend in excess of $1 billion in terms of what we collected by way of revenues. So which means that we, in layman's terms, we added $1 billion to the national debt. For this fiscal period, I think we're hovering around somewhere around $1 billion thereabouts. So you're looking at in excess of $2 billion we would have added to the national debt in a matter of under 2 years, right? And that position is obviously unsustainable, right? Even with the growth in the economy, it's not going to close the gap in the immediate term. We do have to make some decisions, and the decisions are either by way of cutting public expenditure and increasing the level of taxation, and or both, a combination thereof. Unfortunately, the last communication didn't go as far as introducing some of those reforms that were needed to really make the turn that is required.
The turn that is required. Okay, let's talk about the turn, right? Rupert Pinder, noted economist here in country, civil servant, former civil servant as well, working professor. What do they call what type of professor?
Adjunct.
Thank you. I was going to say associate, and he was wrong. But adjunct professor at UB, University of the Bahamas, joining us. The turn. All right, I want you to paint it for me, and as layman of the terms that you can, especially for my audience and I, right? For both, or for all of us. When you say the turn, what if, and best use analogies if you must, help us to understand where do we truly, in the global picture of how do we sit in our economy? Are we in a fiscal crisis? How do we look internationally? I mean, what do we look like? That's where I'm trying to figure out. And then what does that turn look like? The turn we should be at what point in GDP? What amount of funding do we need? Do we need to, there's so many questions, but I'm trying to get a sense of really as best as you can in layman terms, that marker of where we are and how do we make that turn in the corner? Because you talked about, I figure, more money, we need more revenue.
Well, I'll try to break it down as best as I can. Now, one of the things here is that, I mean, for years we've been running these deficits. In other words, our expenditure far exceeds our revenues. And for years we've been kicking the can down the road. And unfortunately, what has happened now is that we've essentially, and it's not just today, I mean, for a number of years, for a few years now, we've hit the wall, essentially. We cannot go any further. And we have to make the changes that are required. Now, one of the things that a lot of persons would say is that, hey, look, the position that the Bahamas finds itself is no different than what you would see in a number of countries within the Caribbean, particularly in light of COVID-19, which is wreaked havoc throughout the region in terms of a lot of these small economies. And the same thing with respect to the developed countries. The fundamental difference between the Bahamas versus, let's say, United States or Great Britain or whatever, is that these countries have the ability to essentially to print money. So you would have seen during the pandemic, the United States introduced these stimulus plans. I think they've had in excess of $2 to $3 trillion that they've essentially injected into their economy. They have the ability essentially to print money. The Bahamas don't have that luxury. essentially what happens here is that as our debt increases, it means that we have to spend more to service our debt, which means that at the end of the day, if you're spending 30, let's say anywhere from 20 to 30 cents of government revenues to service our debt, what it means here is that there's less monies available to build roads, to build schools, to spend on education, and to spend on healthcare. So whenever you have a growing debt problem, it means that there's less resources available for the government to do some of the things in terms of improving the welfare of its citizens. And that's the reason why it's so important in terms of containing the overall national debt. The IMF has stated that the debt to GDP, that usually when you exceed the threshold, I think of about 70%, you're regarded as being in the red zone, so to speak, in terms of that danger zone. Our debt to GDP in terms of because don't forget, we've lost like about almost $2 billion thereabouts of the economy as a result of COVID-19. So our debt to GDP is somewhere north of 90%. If you were to just do the back of the matchbox kind of calculation, so to speak. And so it's, and one of the things here to note here is that a lot of the problems that we are faced with today it didn't just start with COVID-19, didn't just start with Dorian. This has been years and years in terms of some of the decisions that we obviously could have improved on that has led us to the position that we are in today.
Rupert Pinder, economist, joining us, projecting out. So I know you remember Rupert, some years ago, not just some years ago, I think last year, it was projected that we would not have that V bounce back, but we're looking at 2023 hopefully to see those 19 numbers, those 2019 numbers. Based on what you have seen and calculated, are we trending in the right way to even live up to those?
Certainly, I haven't seen some of the recent numbers in terms of tourism, but generally speaking, certainly over the last few months, I think things have been on the upward trend certainly in terms of the opening of the economy. I think you are spot on when you say we are now in 2021. I think you're pretty much spot on when you say that you would expect some recovery around 2023, because at the start of the pandemic, at the end of 2020, I think they were projecting in terms of about a 3-year turnaround. And so the 3-year turnaround will take us like around 2023. So notwithstanding in terms of some of the uptick, and I know we've had some challenges recently in terms of the increased number of COVID cases, but if we were to continue on the upward trajectory, and hopefully there will be no more extreme measures in terms of having to, lockdowns, et cetera, in light of some of the things, in light of some of these developments. But if we continue on the upward trajectory in terms of the tourism numbers, I think you're looking at the next 2-3 years out before we can perhaps turn the corner with respect to some of the numbers that we would have seen pre-pandemic, which would have been 2019. But bearing in mind that even the numbers that we would have had pre-pandemic in terms of 2019, there was still much to be desired. I mean, we were still running significant fiscal deficit even prior to the pandemic. And one of the things to note here is that even as the economy recovers, even as the tourism numbers come back perhaps to pre-pandemic levels, one of the things to bear in mind is that there's some businesses that are not going to come back, or certainly not going to come back with the level of intensity, for lack of a better word, than you would have seen during the pandemic. So, for example, if you run a nightclub, as a case in point, the question is that even after we start to get the COVID numbers under control, the question is whether or not you're going to see people in mass, in nightclubs, etc., so on and so forth. Would that be, would you have that level of comfort? And bearing in mind that even for tourism to really get the impact in terms of tourism, that tourist dollars has to be spent outside of the hotel. So it has to be spent with respect to small businesses in the over the hill and elsewhere. So it has to be spent in restaurants, nightlife, etc., to feel the real impact of the tourist dollars. And with this pandemic, and the kind of structural changes that you're seeing within the economy, I think what it does is that it delays in terms of some of that recovery, even in like the tourism numbers. And there's one other thing that also to bear in mind as well, that even as tourism rebound, not only do you see in terms of some of the businesses that are slow in terms of coming back, the other thing that you must also consider as well is the inflationary pressure that you see as these as these economies recover. So one of the things that you would have seen in recent times is the escalation in prices with respect to building material. And obviously, I would have a dampening impact in terms of the construction industry. Now you hear the food sources saying, brace yourself for price increases. And so all of these things would have the impact in terms of reducing or mitigating any sort of positive impact, even as you see the recovery with respect to the tourism numbers.
Wow. Rupert Pinder, economist, joining us on the show. So then folks are asking, in terms of, so one question was, are we insolvent? No, right? We're not to that place yet.
No, I mean, we, notwithstanding that in recent years, I mean, we've, our debt, has been downgraded to below investment grade. But there's still seemingly a willingness to lend. Now, the question is, at what price or the interest rate, right?
That's it.
Because, and again, I mean, this obviously would impact in terms of the kind of monies that you have to spend out to service your debt, because you perhaps can find people who are willing to willing to lend you, but then the question is at what price? And the price is obviously, the price that I'm referring to obviously is in terms of the interest rate.
So then let's go to this. At this point, do you see the need? Will the upcoming or incoming government? I saw an article by Gowon Bo, and I think that what he was saying, if I remember correctly, was that any government that comes in will have to increase revenue, will have to increase taxes. Is that something that is what you're seeing? Do we need more revenue? And the people, the only place you can get revenue from at this point, obviously, but is that what the other the incoming government?
What I would say here is that I think for the new government, right? I think, in my view, if I was in their position, what I would be saying, even if not publicly, but certainly in terms of privately, or is that all cards have to be on deck. I mean, I don't think you can eliminate anything at this time if you really want, because it's like being on board a ship that is taking on water. I mean, you have to make some very, 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 very tough decision. One of the things in reading Bo's article, because he did mention in terms of the taxes, but one of the things that he also mentioned as well, and that is in terms of the privatization or divestment of state assets, right? Because one of the things here is that the public corporations, it's no secret, it's really takes a big chunk in terms of overall government expenditures. And I think any incoming government, as part of this overall reform, if they're serious about reform, are going to have a close look at those public corporations. Now, this divestment or some form of privatization could take any number of forms. It can also be in terms of some management agreement. In other words, where you look in terms of putting some of these public corporations in private hands. Just today, I was just giving some thought to it. I mean, I know for some time now, we've been talking about Zenith becoming, I think, like a public broadcast entity or something like that. And to be honest with you, I don't know where we are with that, right? Particularly in light when you have so many competing broadcast stations and whatnot. And I know that Zenith obviously has a lot of coverage within the Family Islands. And some of these radio stations obviously are not in some of those islands. But again, I mean, those are some of the things that you have to look at. The question is that whether or not you need Bahamas here to be servicing all of these islands. Maybe looking at some of the more profitable routes. But at the same time, too, when you decide to divest yourself of some of these assets, by the same token, it also means that you also have to scale down in terms of the size of your operations, which means invariably having to cut staff. But these are some of the decisions that has to be made, and also bearing in mind that the government still has a significant interest in BTC, Cable Bahamas. Cable Bahamas, I think, through the National Insurance Board, so that's something separate. But certainly also has interest in Alive, and all of these potential avenues to raise some money. Now, granted, in some cases, 50, 70, 80, whatever the number is, $1 million may in absolute terms may seem like a lot, but certainly in the context when you're talking about deficits of $1 billion, it's obviously, but every bit counts, and so everything has to be on the table. But, what I would...
Sorry, go ahead, Rupert.
But what I would say to you as well is that as we start to make the pivot and start to introduce some of the reforms, the decisions that we make, it is also important that we send the right signals, because the signals are also important as well.
Okay, good. Hold on. Before you even get there, I want people to follow where you're going there, because reforms and signals. I'm so glad you're mentioning this, because I learned this. I've been learning this in the past. I think I learned that 3 years ago. Just some key words that were said, and listening to the former prime minister and this prime minister and how they're talking. What are you talking about when you say reforms versus signals, so people can get it? And then someone says, then how can we pivot? And we'll get to that on the other side of the break. But explain to people first, when you talk about the reforms, we know we want to do certain things, but what are the signals? What do signals mean?
Well, signals, I guess it's like, for example, let's say that if you had a traffic light, right? You put on your indicator, right? And you say, well, hey, look, I'm going to be turning left. And so that tells everybody who's in the back of you that, hey, look, watch it, this guy is making a left turn, right? That's where we have an indicator, that's where we have a signal. That's the way in which you're expressing some intent in terms of where you want to go. So for example, if you put on your indicator, your signal, say, hey, look, I'm going to go left. Everybody expects for you to go left. If you decide to go right, then we have a problem, more or less, right? Because in that case, you would have indicated to everybody that, hey, look, I want to go left. So the overall actions that you wish to undertake must be in line with the signals that you've indicated. In other words, to give you an example in terms of driving it home, in terms of what I'm talking about here, let us just say that if you say that, hey, look, the economy is in, we have to manage our overall debt and so on and so forth. But yet, on the other hand, you decide to say, well, I'm going to give a 20% wage hike to the public service because there's an election that's coming. Right? To me, you've now signaled that everything is okay.
To who? And who? When governments do fiscal,
so
why are we signaling to?
But while your messaging is saying that, hey, look, we have to engage in some belt tightening, you've just indicated that all is well, right? And so on the other hand, when people start placing demands and saying, well, hey, look, we want this, we want that, you cannot flip the script on them and say, well, hey, look, we don't have the resources to do so. Because what you've just indicated by way of your actions, that you do have the resources. If you understand what I'm saying.
No, and I get it. And I want to know, how big is that when we're talking about lenders, right? We've had ministers do the rodeo tour, right? The financial tour. We've had them go to Switzerland. We've had them go to all these fancy places to beg for money. I want to know, how important are the signals? Who's watching us when we say these things, right? Like, who's watching apart from the citizenry? Who's watching?
But again, this is where you have to disconnect, and it's obviously by design. I'm speaking very candidly here. I mean, there's no color blinders on or whatever, because I think it's important in terms of educating your audience. And this is where you have to disconnect because, for example, if you were to read the budget communication, right, let's call it for what it is. It was really intended for a domestic population.
That's right.
It was intended for your populace to say, well, all is well, we're going to give you this, don't worry about no new taxes, don't worry about us having to cut the size of the civil service, etc. We have X amount in terms of reserves, notwithstanding that a lot of that is being propped up by way of foreign currency borrowing. But, we paint the best possible picture, and that is fine. When I say that is fine, perhaps you don't want to create any sort of alarm, right? On the other hand, so that works fine with a particular constituent. But at the same time, too, when you're speaking to international investors, you have to talk a different language. You have to talk in terms of what do you plan to do by way of the corrective action? What do you plan to do to address this fiscal deficit? What do you do in terms of public sector expenditure? What are you going to do by way of tax reform, right? Those are so whenever you're talking, given in terms of where we are in light of COVID and in light of some of these events, when you're talking to investors, in my view, the language has to be one of reforms.
Yes.
Your voters or your constituents, nobody wants to hear about having to cut the size of the public service or increases in the level of taxation, right?
No.
But again, and ideally, you should really want a message that can resonate with both audience, and I think it can be achieved, right? I mean, to the extent to which you lay it out and as much as possible you get buy-in both domestically and as well as to your investors.
We're going to take a quick break. Rupert Pinder, economist, joining us. Rupert, I got tons of questions for you. My question is, can we go into this next? Can we do anything in this economy right now without borrowing more money? Anything right now without borrowing more money or raising taxes? Are there strategies that we can do where we don't have to do either one of those? And I want to get your thoughts after this. And someone asked about the devaluing of the dollar. Questions on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We'll be back right after.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
Elevate your home with BTC's super fast fiber internet plans for the best speeds to stay connected. Get 50% more savings with us and speeds starting at 100 megabits per second up to 600 megabits per second. Enjoy the ultimate internet experience for all your work, study, and entertainment needs. Plus, get unlimited mobile benefits when you add it to your home internet plan. Upgrade or sign up today. Visit any BTC store or btcbahamas.com. Conditions apply.
In the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, this government was nowhere to be seen.
Your aid is coming from the U.S. What are you getting from the Bahamian government?
Nothing at all. Survivors questioned if help from the government would ever arrive.
As relief supplies are now finally arriving, volunteers complain about Bahamian government red tape.
At this point in time, we are on our own and we're trying to get our government officials, please come down here and show your faces.
When they were needed most, this government was nowhere to be found.
This has been a paid political announcement by the PLP.
When I had got prostate cancer, my family didn't know if I was going to live. At Cancer Treatment Centers of America, within days, I got an appointment. They presented me with treatment options, and we set up a robotic prostatectomy. When my scans came back, there are no signs of cancer. They don't see you as a number, they see you as a part of the family. I'm going on with my life. That's a real gift.
Call us at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
Hello, Bahamas. My name is Dr. Dwayne Sands. I was born and raised in Centerville, in the heart of the valley, Nassau, Bahamas. I'm a proud Bahamian. I've been fortunate to represent the great people of Elizabeth for the last 5 years. It has always been my dream to serve my country, and I have been involved in the political process on the front line since 2009. I am very, very proud of the support of my family, who have been with me from the beginning and who are still with me to this day. In particular, my wife, Larica, and all of my children, and actually there's quite a few of them. I'm actually a cardiovascular surgeon. What that means is I take on the sickest people with the biggest problems every day. And so for me, the political process to deal with the challenges facing our country is pretty much par for the course. It's what I do every day. I am happy to be a part of the great team of the Free National Movement under the leadership of Dr. Hubert Minnis. We are indeed Elizabeth Strong.
This has been a paid political announcement by the FNM candidate for Elizabeth.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
It's the hit back with Nahaja Black. It's the hit back with Nahaja Black. It's the hit back with Nahaja Black. It's the hit back.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Really happy to have joining us, noted economist here with us, Mr. Rupert Pinder. Rupert, I want to ask you now, we got a lot of questions that folks are asking, and I want to get to some of them. What I wanted to ask, I said, we went to break, and I have some text messages, actually a really good text message as well, and some on the side. Do we have options? Are there any alternatives to avoid a tax hike and or lending? Do we have any options or alternatives? Because some have argued that this is one of the reasons why this administration has called it a snap election. We are not getting the sort of funding or the means that we need at this point unless we increase taxes and the government gets a new mandate from the people. Is there a possibility that we can do anything without borrowing or increasing taxes on the Bahamian people?
Well, I think in the immediate term, I don't see any alternative other than to borrow in the immediate term, right? Because any sort of changes that you would make, even if you were to look in terms of a tax hike, it takes time for you to be able to realize those revenues, eh? Because if you were to, increase the rate today, even in terms of closing the budget gap, it's not like 1 month later you collect the revenues that that are needed. So in the immediate term, you do have to borrow. What you're hoping is that over time, you reduce the overall amounts that are required, as things expand. But what is important to understand here is that whatever measures that you decide to take, whether it's expenditure cuts, tax increases, one of the things that you must also bear in mind, and that is that you don't want to do anything that will really place major constraint on your ability to grow your economy, because that's important, eh?
Yeah.
One of the things here is that I am all for tax changes, and I deliberately use the word tax changes as opposed to tax increases, right? Because whenever people think of tax increases, they think about, for example, having to increase rates, et cetera, so on and so forth. What we have in this country, and we've said it so many times, is that we have a tax system that places a lot of burden on persons at the low end of the income spectrum. So we have a highly regressive tax system. We need to look at a more progressive form of taxation. In other words, where persons who have a greater ability to pay should pay more by way of taxes, right? And I do believe that the time has come whereby we have to look seriously at income and or some form of payroll taxes, right? And reduce some of the burden in terms of taxation at the low end of the spectrum. One of the things to note here is that notwithstanding in terms of how people feel about the level of taxes in this country, it's a paradox of sort, because what you do have is that when people make the statement that, we are taxed heavily, that could be a truism. And at the same time, somebody can say that we are undertaxed. And again, that argument is also true.
I get that argument a lot from those who are in government.
To the extent to which I think even with the value-added tax, our tax revenue as a proportion of our GDP, I think is somewhere around 18%, somewhere about 18, 19%. Most of the international agencies, when they do a benchmark comparisons, even within the region, you would find that the rate is somewhere between 20 to 30%. So even if you were to take the arithmetic mean of that and say we come in with somewhere around 25%, it suggests that there is still significant headroom in terms of additional taxes, right? But again, not necessarily the lower end of the tax spectrum. Now, one of the things you would have seen is that even with the whole conversation with the US and some of its OECD partners, what they're saying now is, hey, they want to have a global corporate tax,
Yeah, and I heard that we've agreed to that.
And so one of the things here is that for years, we have marketed the Bahamas as a tax haven, right? And of course, we would have seen, we would have heard all of the whole discussion in terms of the blacklisting. The blacklisting, in my view, has perhaps arguably, in my view, has less to do to the extent to which your jurisdiction is used for some sort of nefarious activity, more so to the extent to which at these developed countries are seeing your jurisdiction as being a haven for tax evasion. And so the more, or tax avoidance, and so the more the more you make it palatable for citizens of those jurisdictions to do business in your country, they will continue, in my view, to blacklist you.
Yes, right.
And they will continue to move that post, right? Because they feel that you are removing their ability to tax their citizens or entities doing business within their jurisdictions. And so again, the question is that I think in Barbados you have these double tax exchange treaties, whereby, for example, if a country has a tax exchange treaty with another country, and we agree to tax any activity Nahaja Incorporated is doing business in the Bahamas, we tax you at 10%, but you have no problems paying the 10% because of the boards you're having to pay 20 or 25% in your own country. So it's a win-win proposition, right? And so all of these are sort of things that obviously we can look at as part of the overall tax reform, and at the same time reducing some of the burdens for persons at the low end of the spectrum.
Rupert, hold on, Rupert, make sure. Rupert Pinder, economist, joining us. So what you're saying, Rupert, is that right now, we don't even tax, we don't have any form of corporate tax at all in country. Just making sure that that's clear. No form of country.
And I just want to state you in terms of a caveat, because I really have to give this one a bit of thought, and that is really to the extent to which how business license fees, which is a very nominal, very low nominal amount, but beyond that, no.
And it's something. So because one of the arguments, Rupert Pinder, if you're just tuning in, one of the arguments against it is, but if we tax corporations, they'll leave. And my thing is, but they're not paying anything to be here. So what is the benefit? How would we miss them other than employment? And that's the thing. And that's the tactic, right?
But I've had many debates with persons in the financial services sector, and I think, and when I say debates, because I think for the most part, I think particularly on this point, I think most of us are pretty much aligned. And to me, I think it's a very, very weak argument when we say that, hey, look, we have to be careful how we tax these people because they would just simply leave the jurisdiction. And I think it's really a cop-out for the most part, because I wonder to what extent we really do the sort of robust analysis before we even come to that conclusion. I mean, look at the amount of concessions we give to some of these entities. I mean, look at some of the, look at, as a case in point, look at some of these residential gated communities,
Yeah.
Right? Where the people have the ability to pay, but yet if they are using a nail to nail down a piece of wood, I mean, that nail is coming in duty free, right? And there's a reason why they have, of all the other places in the world that they can choose to be, given their resources, eh?
Yeah.
There's a reason why they chose to be here. This is a beautiful country. Somebody has to pay for that infrastructure. Somebody has to pay for the national security, right? Somebody has to pay for the pristine environment that they get to enjoy. And so the question then becomes, are they prepared to give up a little bit more to enjoy this? And I'm not sure, I wonder if anybody ever stopped to think that some of these investors, they come here, and by the way, whatever they're doing, if you or I were in that same position, you would do the same thing. I mean, this is how you get rich. This is how you maintain your wealth. Eh? You leverage as much as you can. But anybody ever stop to think that these people, they come here, and there was a survey thing that was conducted. I think there were more, perhaps, billionaires per capita in the Bahamas than anywhere else in the world, and particularly when you look at some of the private keys. And anybody ever stop to think that, these people come here, they get a lot by way of concessions. Their business is obviously welcome, and we love to have them here. But anybody ever stop for a second to think, after getting all of these concessions, they turn around and say, well, we will build you a school. We will give you lots of monies.
We never asked for those things.
For the help out in your communities and so on and so forth. Because they realize that, hey, look, I mean, it's one thing to say, well, okay, I'm being a very good corporate citizen. But they also realize that, hey, look, I mean, what I'm getting, the benefits that I'm getting relative to what I'm paying warrants me to make that level of investment. And I'm not entirely convinced. And it's the same argument that you hear in the United States when it comes, let's say, the Republicans who obviously were in favor of more tax reductions and that sort of stuff. They say, well, if you increase the tax rates, it would reduce our ability or our willingness to invest.
When you reduced it, they pocketed the profits.
Right. I mean, and again, I mean, it's the same old playbook, and I mean, who pushes the envelope? Who challenges this? Or who even do a comparative analysis to say, well, okay, what if we, or what is happening in comparable jurisdiction by way of the taxes, et cetera. And one of the things here is that we need more business people to help us with the overall decision making. Right?
That's if they're included in it, right?
Sorry?
That's if they're included in the decision making, and it's not, because a lot of those are special interests who stay at the table. So there are some businesses that stay at the table.
Well, I mean, maybe not never mind.
I want to ask you, we're just putting
I'll leave that one alone.
Yeah. Don't touch that one. Rupert Pinder, economist, joining us. Someone sent a text. Can you ask Mr. Pinder to explain the difference between our GDP and Japan's GDP of 266%? I think Bahamians need to know what these differences mean in the real world.
When is it 260? Were they talking about debt to GDP? What are they talking about?
I'm hoping he can, because that was the question I was about to ask too. Are we talking debt to GDP? I'm thinking maybe debt to GDP.
Yeah, but again, I mean, and without even having the luxury right now of Googling anything with respect to Japan, but just looking at the question just on the surface of it, and I assume the 266% that they're talking about is really in terms of debt to GDP. And again, you have to understand the dynamics of your own economy when you make those comparisons, right? Because Japan, like a lot of countries, have the ability to print their own money because, for one, they have a large domestic market. So that money, for example, they don't have to rely so much on imports as in the case of the Bahamas, right?
Right.
So, for example, if Japan wants to print more yen, they have the ability to spend that money domestically to get all the goods and services that they need, because a lot of those stuff can be produced locally. On the other hand, if we decide that, we have this huge debt and we just continue to print Bahamian dollars, the reality of it is that, the Bahamian dollar really has no value outside of the Bahamas. To the extent, and everything that we need just about has to be imported, so we need US dollars. This economy runs off US dollars. It doesn't run off Bahamian dollars per se, it runs on US dollars because of the high level of import. And you have to be very careful in terms of looking at countries that have the ability to print their currency. And one of the things here is that even in the United States, for example, you would have seen in terms of the trillions of dollars that they would have essentially printed in response to the COVID crisis. And I'm sure some of it is also creating some inflationary pressures within their own economy as well. And that's one of the downsides.
Uh-oh, we lost Rupert Pinder there. Hopefully he is able to bounce back on. But that is one of the big points that if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We kind of had an audio issue. Hopefully we can get Rupert back on and he's able to sign back on. Okay, I see him there. Rupert, are you ready? Just let's see. Are you ready?
Yeah, sure. I think we got disconnected there for a second.
There you go. And look, you're on camera. Oh, well.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. So tell us, finish your thought now.
No, but basically what I was saying in the long and short of it all is that I think we have to be careful when we look at the debt of some of these other countries, particularly developed countries, and say, well, okay, this country has a debt of, I don't know, X 100% or whatever, and ours is less than 100 or whatever. Why is there a concern? Just continue to. We don't have the ability to just simply rack up debt because our economy really survives in terms of
foreign reserves.
Foreign reserves in terms of US dollars. Right?
Foreign reserves. I said that before you go. Right now, and that's the challenge. We will have to borrow. What is the normal inflow? And I'm asking you this. I didn't ask you to prepare with this information, but the normal inflow of US currency per annum, if we didn't have COVID or whatnot, what is our average income? And normally, what does the bank have, central bank have, as foreign reserve or US currency stored up in a healthy, year?
That's to be honest, that's a very good question, and unfortunately, I didn't come armed with that bit of data, right? In terms of the actual inflows. If my memory serves me correct, I think it's just. I want to think that. Well, our reserves certainly even because actually the reserve, I think towards the end of 2020 was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was hovering around $2 billion.
Yeah.
Which would have been around the same amount that we would have had even in light of pre-pandemic, right? So we seem to be, if I'm not mistaken, hovering somewhere around 1.7, somewhere between the region of 1.7 to $2 billion, somewhere thereabouts. But and bearing in mind that, for example, the reserves at the beginning of the year versus the fourth quarter is different because you find that during the fourth quarter, during the Christmas season, there is usually a lot of outflows in terms of foreign reserves for that Christmas shopping and that sort of stuff, right? And to replenish inventory. So I would want to think somewhere around 1.7, $1.8 billion there. Now, bearing in mind that at the end of 2020, while we had reserves which were comparable to what we would have seen prior to the pandemic, what was interesting to note is that amount of reserve that you saw towards 2020 was due in part to some of the restrictions that the central bank put in place.
Yes,
right?
That's so true.
Right. So, for example, the central bank, I think, allowed for about $100 million thereabouts, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of repatriation of funds that national insurance would have invested abroad. There was also a moratorium, I think, placed on the forex market. I think some real estate purchases as well. and also I think in terms of the repatriation of profits, right? So there were a lot of restrictions that were put in place. And at the same time, there was also some foreign currency borrowing as well that also helped to boost the foreign reserves. So that 1.8 or whatever, or close to $2 billion that you would have seen towards the end of 2020, it's not so much, it's one thing to focus on that number, but it's more important, in my view, to focus on the source of that number in terms of how that number was, how did we arrive at that, compared to, let's say, pre-pandemic, when a lot of that money would have been a result of foreign currency earnings from your foreign trade, i.e. tourism and the financial services sector.
Last question for you, Rupert, before we go. The government that is to come in, right? The incoming government, whichever it may be, whomever it may be, what do you believe would be their top three, or should be their top three objectives? If you were the economist for any one of them, what would be your recommendations to that government upcoming?
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because each 3 points perhaps I can list, each will have its own subcategories, so to speak, in terms of, but one will be certainly in terms of containing the debt, the growth in the debt, right? That has to be, in my view, a number one priority. I mean, in my view, debt management, right? And the debt management could mean in terms of, you look in terms of, your borrowing requirements, the fiscal deficits, which means you obviously have to look at your revenue, the expenditure side of the equation, but all of those things feed into your debt. So debt has to be, in my view, number one. Second is really in terms of how you grow this economy, right? Growth. Now, some people may argue that perhaps growth ought to be number one, but certainly in terms of the media, I would still remain focused in terms of the debt, but growing the economy. Bearing in mind that there are a lot of businesses would have retrenched, a lot of businesses may have been phased out as a result of COVID, etc. And we have to look in terms of, in terms of your domestic industries and that sort of stuff. And I don't believe that the solution is just throwing monies at businesses, saying, because if you look at it, every business you can think of can tell you in terms of how they're underfunded. And there's a limit in terms of the government overall, in terms of the resources and that sort of stuff. But they have to look consciously in terms of the structure of this economy and what businesses and where do they need to make the investment and that sort of stuff to actually encourage the growth within the economy. So one will be debt, two will be the overall growth within the economy, and three, as corny as it may sound, just bringing relief to individuals, right? And one of the things here is that, and when I say relief, I mean, we really have to look at it to the extent to which we can get people working, right? And by the way, and I will say this candidly, right? And unapologetically, and that is this, unemployment assistance and how much money you spend on national insurance and feeding program is no bragging rights. It's no bragging rights. Because, the thing about it here is that if your sister, I don't know whether you have a sister, but I'm just using an analogy.
Right.
If your sister came to you and said to you, well, hey, look, I've just lost my job and so on and so forth, and you say, well, okay, well, here is 5 cans of corned beef, 3 cans of tuna and a loaf of bread, and so on and so forth this week. Next week, you provide them with some cornflakes and milk and juice and so on and so forth. That is nothing to go to the public and brag about.
That's right.
What you should be saying is that, hey, look, in a time of need, I was happy that I was in a position to assist. However, what I can say is that today I'm now putting you on a path to be in a position to earn a living.
Let me ask you, Rupert. Right. Stimulus package. I think which part, man, we got some groups who are saying, listen, everyone should get a stimulus package. And in terms of just fund, something better than the $100 or $200 a month that we're getting. What do you think? Is that feasible? And we have like 90 seconds on that. Is that something feasible?
Repeat, the stimulus package?
Yeah, of some sort of funding, like a check of some sort that's, one-time or two-time?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't like the use of the word stimulus. And I know it's used very loosely in this economy. I don't like to use the word stimulus in terms of the Bahamas. That is some Eurocentric, American-centric type terminology. And again, basically what it really amounts to is printing money, right? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you can talk about injecting all kind of Bahamian dollars into this economy. In the absence of foreign currency reserves, earnings on foreign currency, all you're going to do is be running down the reserves. That's all you're really doing. And so we import everything. And so at the end of the day, anybody who's talking about stimulus package in the absence of having foreign exchange earnings certainly don't understand how this economy works.
Bingo. I love it.
Those things work in the United States that has the ability to print money, eh? Yeah. And by the way, all of that US dollars that the US has been printing, that's going to find its way in as part of China's reserves. Because the US, so China's going to be buying up a lot of US assets very shortly, eh? Yeah. Because all of those trillions of dollars find its way to China to replenish Walmart's inventory and so on and so forth. But whenever people talk about stimulating this economy using Bahamian dollars, that's a fundamental misunderstanding in terms of how this economy works.
Rupert, thank you so much, buddy. We gotta go. Rupert Pender, noted economist, joining us on the Hit Back. Everyone, have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow. We're out.